Gentlemen, welcome to the morning show. I apologize for the delay. We all know that I am technologically inept, so it's always my fault. But before we get rolling here, I need to do a little bit of house cleaning. We need to thank GBC for all the support and help that they give us in bringing all the shows that ATV Talk does, the guests, all the education, all the things that are happening. GBC is always part of it. They also have some great tires for your ATV, your UTV, and even your truck. So check out GBC if you're looking for some great tires to go off-roading with. Elka Suspension, the leader in shock technology in the ATV and UTV industry. Go find a dealer, get some Elkas on your machine. It will instantly ride better. Make sure you talk to their engineers and get it set up for you personally. The Blunt family for all their support in helping ATV Talk bring you information shows. They were a big instrumental help in getting us to Ohio and the Legends race. So thank you to the Blunt family. Craig Christie was also one of those people that did that as well. And we want to thank you, Craig, for all your support. Antelope Slot Canyon Tours. Guys, if you're in Arizona, you need to book a tour, go see the canyons. These guys will take you and show you the amazing desert in Arizona. Sometimes I lose speech on that because I don't have the words to describe it. It's pretty awesome stuff. If you're an amateur photographer, you'll have photos for the rest of your life, and your friends will be awed by them. So, gentlemen, I appreciate it. I'm just going to introduce everybody, and then I'm going to get into what we're going to talk about. We have Joe Tolle from ATV On Demand. We have Jason Zettel from Team Blind, and we have Brad Easton, a Brad, I'm going to let you answer that question for me.
Great, Leonard. Yeah, so I am a clinical social worker. I've been a therapist for over 20 years.
Excellent. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about a little bit about mental health and suicide awareness. And this is all educational. We're not going to talk about anything personal or anything that the overlords at YouTube would deem unnecessary. And we don't want to talk about that anyways. We just want awareness and education. This is a very touchy subject for a lot of people, and I understand why it's very difficult for a lot of us to understand all the ins and outs out of it. I'm going to focus most of my questions to Brad and Jason based on the military aspect, because that does directly affects how I'm seeing it with, the what I'm seeing is a lack of people taking care of our military. You have men and women coming back from deployments, and they're not being brought back into society correctly. And I think that this is a huge problem that we're not addressing correctly. And Jason, you having military experience, and Brad, you've spoken to many people, especially Jason, about this. If I stutter a little bit or I'm stammering a little bit, please excuse that. Like I said, this is not an easy subject to talk about, and when you're not as fluent and educated on it, it makes it a little more difficult. Brad, I'm going to start with you. If you could just roll us into this. Joe, jump in with a question anytime you have one. And Jason, please don't be afraid. I know you're never afraid to talk. Brad, start us off a little bit about where we're at with, how we can educate people better on this, and then we'll get into some of the questions.
Great, Leonard. So this is a great time to be talking about suicide awareness and suicide prevention. The month of September, we look at, as a country, to look more closely at how to help people who are dealing with suicide. I know, like in the month of September in the past, I've been involved with some suicide awareness walks where communities will get together and talk plainly about how suicide has impacted their lives. Suicide is something that touches all people. It's whatever background you're from, whatever age, your population is being impacted. And so the idea of making people more aware about suicide and some of the risk factors, some of the warning signs, for to help to understand if someone is potentially going to be suicidal. And that it's a dialogue that needs to happen, and participating in a suicide walk day is a strong opportunity to make yourself more aware, in your community.
And they
Well,
have a lot of like most local communities. If you look out on message boards and especially if you're near a military base or any highly populated military area, a lot of places they advertise those things, to bring those things up for each month. Like we have, September is Suicide Awareness Month. Today's the 1st of September, so like day one, we're able to get this thing started. So I mean, essentially, we're having an online walk for this. So um October, you get the different months for different awarenesses, and it's a great thing that the country has decided to recognize September as Suicide Awareness Month, because it is a stigma, that there's a stigma associated with it, especially within the veteran community, that you're supposed to be big and strong and veterans and this, that, and the other. But the people are struggling, and we are losing, service members, and not just service members. Sometimes it may be family members of service members, based on the different things that everyone's experienced. So the fact that the country has decided to recognize that, I think that's one of the first steps that needed to have been taken in bringing awareness and to be able to help the veteran community.
what
Brad,
is the
scoot your
process?
video back a little bit. So
What is the process for taking a service member in from a deployment, and let's just say that their service is up? Do they go through a class, or do they go through any type of reorientation into society? Because the military community is totally different than society. You're not living the same way that we do out here in the normal world. And I've spoken to all of my military friends, and there is a transition period. But Jason, because I don't know, Brad, have you got any military support service?
Have I? I
Yeah.
have not been active in
Jason,
military service.
So Jason, you're the only one. So we're going to go off of what
so they have separation. It's like leading up to the end of your enlistment or your retirement. There's classes and programs. Some of them are mandatory, some of them are not. Where there's they help you. There's they have like it's almost like a guidance counselor. It's a position that different every base has one, every unit has one, to where they have a transitioning period. It's like a career counselor. So if you're getting close to your retirement or the end of your active service, there's some mandatory programs and some non-mandatory programs. And I think the some of the shortfalling is, and of course I've been out for over 10 years now, so things have probably changed drastically. But they sit down and they'll help you with resumes and job searches. Um, but sometimes there isn't a whole lot of like social skill orientation. Like those courses are available. Like I said, some may be mandatory, some aren't. I don't know how it's structured nowadays. But if some guys they choose not to do those things, or they just get their check in the box and they just want to get out and get away. And once you're out, but of course, that's all coming from a modern day. That stuff has just started to be implemented within the last few decades. But there's still, I mean, we still have World War II vets, we have Vietnam vets. That there's still multiple generations that many of those programs and that were not available for them at that time. So some of the stuff that's happening with the VA is guys that were not eligible for certain benefits at the time of their discharge or separation, or their type of discharge or separation. Many programs were not available to them at that time, and now they're starting to be available to those guys, because they're starting to realize that there is a mental health epidemic, that these guys are, there's things coming back, and there's new studies and stuff that that I'm sure Brad can expand upon, of things that are mental health related, that there's new medical classifications and whatnot that was not a thing, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, or even more, back after the world wars. So there's just been these generations of people that just thought, okay, you just got to suck it up and deal with it. You did your thing, you just move on with life. And later on, those things come back to those guys. Like, I don't have any combat experience, so I can't speak from that perspective, but I
Let
have
me
many
interrupt you
close
just real quick.
friends that are.
Let me just interrupt you real quick because I want to feed off of something that you just said. So, Brad, I'm going to turn this over to you. The stigma of men, and I use men for a deal because we're all men here, and I can't speak because I'm not a gal. Men are expected to be fierce, strong, no tears, uh, no mental weakness, and for us to reach out to a counselor, for us to reach out for help, is always a big step. I want you to elaborate on that because you have more experience dealing with it than I do. I just know that I've always been taught, hey, there's no bone, there's no injury, your mind is totally fine. You get out there, take care of your job. I don't want to hear it. And that's been, how I've grown up with the men and the way things have been in life. And, I take it to heart. I don't when I'm hurting, I don't tell anybody. I get up, go do my job every time. Doesn't matter. Sick, get up, go do my job. Elaborate on that because we don't let our shields down very often. And Jason, I appreciate you allowing us to see you at a vulnerable state because I understand in our brief conversations, this is vulnerable for you. And I appreciate that. And you have a lot of friends and a lot of people watching that are your pals. And I want to make sure that they know that we appreciate what you're doing. Brad, go ahead if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, great point to bring up there, Leonard. Yeah, I mean, in our society, it's almost like it's taboo to think of a male at times, having feelings or having sensitivity or even struggling in certain areas. And the idea of struggling with thoughts of self-harm or struggling with not being mentally strong at all times in all moments. I mean, that's something that for males, it is in a lot of ways not accepted at all. And this is where I think there have been a lot of advancements in therapy and giving individuals more of an opportunity to potentially be vulnerable and be more willing to engage with others in therapy. One of the things that I've been doing recently even is this idea called teletherapy, where, even a therapy session, it doesn't have to be face to face, 3 feet away from a therapist. It can be in your convenience, in your comfort, over a phone. And you can connect with a therapist and open up those difficult moments and spots for your life. And it can even be, it doesn't even have to be a video screen. It can just be a telephone call. And that's something that I think has been revolutionary. There's a lot of reasons to not make it to a therapy appointment, to not get across town 60 minutes to fight through traffic, to sit in a lobby, with a lot of people that you don't know, than to meet with a therapist for 45 minutes or 50 minutes, But now you can access therapy in a lot more seamless way and just with a lot more privacy in the end. And I think a lot of males, they really need that because it is a very difficult spot to go to be opened up emotionally and within a therapy session.
How do you address that with your male patients that are struggling with the ability to allow themselves to open up and to say, I need help?
Great question. I think that that's something that I have a skill set involved with. Jason may be able to chime in on that a little bit, but like this idea that I need to come at an individual humbly and to like really work on building a relationship of trust with a male who's maybe hearing from a significant other, from family members, that they need to be involved with therapy, but the idea of them investing in themselves to be involved with therapy is still a very foreign idea. And to be, potentially in a, opening themselves up and be in a weak state to review issues with another person. And so for me, that's something that I am continuing to develop moment by moment as I'm meeting with a client, acknowledging that they are taking that step, celebrating that step with them, that they are opening up to a therapist on difficult issues, that they're opening themselves up to working through trauma from their past. And that is something that I don't take for granted. The idea of building a therapeutic relationship with someone is real. And when you have it, someone is going to be able to dig deep and explore issues that they've been carrying alone and dealing with alone for years, for decades. And once I have that therapeutic bond with someone, I'm taking care of it moment by moment. And you know what? I'm even talking to people actively that, hey, if you do not feel like you have a therapeutic bond with me, if you don't feel like you can open up to me, tell me, because there are other therapists that are available within our team. And I want you to have the best level of therapy possible and to be able to go there dig deep in these therapy sessions. So I just try to be very open with that and encourage people to take that steps of trust.
That's awesome stuff. Hey, if anybody that's listening is feel like they want to talk to somebody, there's a number that you can text or call. It's 988. I was doing a little bit of research, and I think that if you're feeling that way, dial that number, talk to somebody, and get some help, because it's important. Jason, I'm going to bring this back to you for a moment. And so you've had to reach out, and you've had to set aside that macho male figure for a moment and ask for help. And I want to know from you, being that you have the experience here, what were some of the things that allowed you to make that first step?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you, things like and I know we talked about this before a few days ago when we were talking about some things. Like when my dad went to Afghanistan, so I was still in high school. I was 19 years old or 18 years old. And so to an extent, that was like the first time that like my mental health was affected by the military to an extent, because I was watching, he is gone in Afghanistan. It's 2004. Things are at like their peak. You're watching the news, you're hearing about bombings and attacks, and this near this base, and it's like the last place we knew like where my dad was, and you don't hear from him for like a couple weeks and stuff like that, and then watching the effects that had, on my mother watching that stuff too. And I'm the man of the house. I'm 18. My younger sister was there. And at the time she was diagnosed with cancer. So it was an overwhelming experience for me, from a young age. And so like that was my first encounter with therapy sessions. What was back then, to kind of say, to have somebody else to reassure me, hey, it's gonna be good. Dad's coming home. It's gonna be all right. And I worked through that. And then when I took the step to go into the military, based on that built like a strong mental foundation for me going in. And I just wanted to continue, that path of service to the country and whatnot. And I went through my 6 years in the reserves. I spent multiple times on, active duty training assignments and exercises and working for military contractors. So I was always surrounded by military personnel, and I got to see how that was affecting others. And eventually, to an extent, that started to kind of have an effect on me, where I'm watching my buddies come home, or see you're having my buddies not come home, or meeting guys that did not come back the way that they left. That took a toll on me, slightly, almost like a sense of like a survivor's guilt. Like I didn't get to go and do that. I didn't, like I felt to a part where I wish that I could have been like in their place, seeing because I was a young guy. I wasn't married. I was just out for myself, and hey, let me go do it instead of those guys. They've got something more than I have. Um, and then I got, I never got to go overseas, and my time in the military came to an end. Um, and then I still had those types of feelings, and that's when I got back into racing. Not to flip it all around, but like racing has been always been like my sense of closure, and I got to go start running nationals again with my dad, and that brought back that mental clarity and that father son bonding, and helped ease my mind of those types of things. And but then when I stopped racing again, and I went, basically went on a 10-year soul search in the oil field that was, fueled with legal issues and some self-destructive pattern. And looking back, a lot of a lot, and eventually then some of my therapies were court ordered, places I didn't want to be. But then eventually it takes that turn of getting put into a position you don't want to be in, to put yourself in a position where you want to be. So by going to those sessions and doing stuff, with counselings and therapy that I didn't want to go to, eventually that was the thing that I looked forward to the most, ironically. And some people grasp that, some people don't. Thankfully, I was mentally strong enough to put myself in my place, and hey, I don't want to be in this position again. I'm going to follow through with what these guys are saying and follow the steps, the different, and Brad will be able to expand on, like, there's different structures and different types of programs, whether it's, for drug and alcohol abuse and mental health. And a lot of them are tied together, because in order to eliminate that demon, you have to start looking for, the positive side of things, and, practicing different, like they have like the, mindfulness practicing, and different like tiers of these different programs that are being developed, because they start seeing people, and it's large, it's large in the veteran community. And I'm one of those statistics where, I had issues with alcohol, and unfortunately there are many other veterans. And if you take that small concentration of a group of type of people, and you start picking out hey, okay, well, this guy's got issues with alcohol, this guy's got issues with this guy's got issues with that. Like, to have those types of numbers within one community of people, they have to start finding solutions for those things. They say, this guy's been back here a couple of times, this guy's been back here a couple of times, something
Well,
isn't working. What can we do that's going to work? And they start to more personalize the programs, rather than using like a generalized, a generalized program that they think is going to work for everybody. They start concentrating more on individuals' needs, rather than an umbrella type
so
of
let's
program.
let's expand on that portion of the conversation a bit. And Joe, I'm gonna bring you into this a little bit here with, so we talk about racing because we're all guys that love ATVs and we love racing and riding and
Yep.
all of that. So, but there's also other forms of being able to get your frustration out or focus your mind. Jiu-jitsu is a way to do that. And Joe, you being a disciplined man with the focus of jiu-jitsu, um, that's also helps your ability to race your ATV or ride your ATV as well, correct?
Oh, sure. I do remember though, just in this conversation, my one of my first teachers back when I was 18. So you're going back to like 93, and this lady was, 40 years old at the time. We're still friends, and she would tell me stories about, the schools that she went to when she was in her 20s, you're going back to like 70s. And she would tell me how guys that would come back from Vietnam would get involved in, karate, taekwondo, tang sudo, it just to train because they would go and they trained very rough at the time. It's very different than today. And that these guys would go in here and they'd sign up for martial arts and they'd go beat the shit out of each other so that they weren't at home, to like help curb domestic issues at home, to get that out, to get that frustration out, that anger out. Yeah, that's
where I'm going with this, Brad, for you is I'm trying to set up the therapeutical deals, aspects of athletics and racing, whether it be jujitsu or racing your ATV. How important is it for your patients or people in general to have some outlet to get them clear?
Great ideas. So first and foremost, like, your body responds positively to physical action, physical activity. Your body produces endorphins that are going to help your mind to stabilize and going to help you to feel better about your life. And, as Joe was talking about, and Jason, like the level of discipline that you need to be able to commit yourself to learning an art such as jiu-jitsu, or to learning an art such as racing, to be able to compete day to day, on a monthly basis, however frequently your races are, you have to be disciplined. There is a very broad range of steps that you need to be able to complete in order to be able to get on that podium, in order to be able to be competitive. And so anything that can help you to hold yourself accountable step by step as you're working towards improving in an area is going to be helpful. And the fact that with racing and other physical exercises, I mean, you have to practice on a regular basis to be able to improve. So those are suggestions that I'm making on a regular basis with my clients, is what level of physical activity do they have? What are they able to explore? Again, what's been helpful for them in the past? What can they commit to now? And maybe their commitment is at a very low level at this point, but it's an active step towards a goal of becoming more emotionally stable through, putting their energy towards positive things.
What was the term? So for motorsports space, I talked to Adam Poppenhaus. He's one of our double amputees. And so he gave me a term as the diversionary therapy through motorsports immersion, but you can replace motorsports with any term that you have. So it's basically you're getting your mind off of these things and immersing yourself into another, whether it's event, jujitsu, racing, baseball, wrestling, anything to get your mind away from it and letting that kind of encompass what you're doing to get your mental health right. And that was one of the things that him and I had a conversation about a few days ago.
Nice. I didn't even think about it that way. I want to ask Brad, this is a question for Brad and Jason. So we all have friends, we all have people in our lives that are possibly needing help. What are some of the signs that we can look for in an individual that is, other than the obvious drug, alcohol abuse? We all understand those, but what are some of the things that we can look at that, we may be able to reach out to a friend, an acquaintance that we see them having an issue, and how would you reach out to them? We're going to start with you, Brad, and then Jason, I want you to join in.
Great. So I'm going to go to a good resource on warning signs. I mean, basic idea is that if someone is talking about or wanting to die or kill themselves, big sign. Looking for a way to kill themselves, like searching online or buying a gun. Talking about feeling hopeless or having no reason to live. And these can just kind of sound like just flippant statements, but you need to be taking notes. Someone brings a comment up like that, there's some actionable statements behind that too. Talking about feeling trapped or unbearable pain, talking about being a burden to others, increasing the use of alcohol or drugs, talked about that earlier. Acting anxious or agitated, behaving recklessly, sleeping too little or too much, withdrawing or isolating themselves, showing rage or talking about seeking revenge, extreme mood swings. So those are things that we can look for. And, you know, one of the things I really look at in therapy is, you know, as a therapist, my job is to ask the difficult questions. My job is to cut through everything and talk about stuff plainly with people. Are you having thoughts of self-harm? Are you having thoughts of ending your life? You know, and those are not easy questions to ask. But I think it's important for people to be able to meet with therapists. And sometimes that's something as a friend or a peer, you know, you can encourage someone to take that step to reach out to the resources of therapy. Those are not easy questions to ask, but you know, it's valuable and it's something that's going to help people.
Jason, before I go to you, I'm going to ask Brad one more question. Ian brought this up in the chat. Brad, you're probably under an enormous amount of pressure talking to the amount of people that you talk to with their issues, and you have I'm sure that it affects you emotionally as well. It has to. You can't hear some of the things that you hear and it not. When you relate that to your experience with your outlet in racing, how is that? Is that allowed you a mental release and given you focus and a new outlet for some of the problems that you may occur or incur?
Definitely. There's friendly fire on that for sure. And I don't say that softly at all. I mean, it's difficult, you know, listening to the trauma and supporting individuals as they're going through, you know, therapy and that. But for me, it's been the idea of being able to have this outlet of where I can let it all hang out on the racetrack. Jason's seen that a few times. It isn't the prettiest thing, but you know, it's an environment where I can go for it completely and compete at the highest level possible for myself. And really, I love it because everyone is equal out there on the racetrack. There's 8, 9, 10 people across the line. It's equal. Anyone can end up on the podium or end up the victor, and you go for it and you give your best opportunity there. And to be able to have that release in my life, I love it. I mean, to be able to work towards that, to competing on a monthly basis or whatever it might be, it's something that diverts me away from, you know, some of the trauma that's occurring in my life for, you know, being a therapist, something that I take on. I love it. I love being a therapist in that, but it is painful at times, you know, and it's a great release for myself.
That's excellent. Jason, back to you on the question. Joe, did you have anything to input? You've been valiantly sitting there, and I just I appreciate that. Did you have something to add?
I just had a question. You know, when we're younger, you know, kids are all dealing with, you know, new emotions, hormones, things like that. And, you know, I just remember when I was a younger guy, like every Friday night, this is pre-smartphone, me and all my close friends that weren't hanging out, we'd all just get on the phone and do a big group call. And I had a friend who always wanted to, have a conversation with his lady, who was all part of our friend, circle. And he'd be, calling her on the other line and threatening self-harm and all this. And this was an every week kind of thing. And it's to be taken serious, but we kind of felt like it was a game he was playing. And it turned out that's what it was. He was trying to manipulate his girlfriend to get away from all the rest of us to go talk to him privately. And, you hear, I've fortunately never known anyone who has hurt themselves. But, I've had people in my life, I ought to jest. And I mean, those are words I've probably uttered at, a few points in life, just when you're sitting there feeling like you're at the bottom of the barrel, but, things get better. But how do you know, when is time? Because, you don't want to overstep and start calling authorities on some friend. And now they're showing up at their house just because they were having a moment of, oh, I'm so down, I should just, yeah, but then if things are serious and it's not just lip service, then if you don't do something and that person goes on and does something to hurt themselves, and you as that friend or that loved one have to deal with the guilt of not stepping up and at least trying to run interference, you got to live with that. And now all of a sudden you're dealing with emotional problems for the rest of your life. I know I would have. So how do you know when I know we talked about some of the points, but how do you know when it's not just lip service, or when you really should step in and call an authority or do something?
Joe,
Jason,
great question.
I want to go to Jason on this for a moment, because
Yeah.
we skipped over him. And then Brad, hold your thought, please.
I mean, Joe, I've actually been in that situation, to be honest with you. And I won't give the specific details of the situation, but it's obviously there's a lot of cry wolves out there, but some people do that because they do want that attention, or they actually need help and they want someone to take notice of that. I mean, sometimes, with all the different signs and symptoms, if it gets to the point, I think, where, like, especially if someone's, if someone's normally drinking, everybody has their drinks, this, that, and the other, but if there's like a serious influx of how much, or if like they're starting to, miss work or family events and stuff like that, like I've probably got like 10, 12 different group chats going on my phone between all the guys. We always, sometimes we'll just like do just a check-in. Hey man, just thinking about you. You're sending people memes on Instagram. Just say, hey, this made me think of you. So that way someone knows, like, hey man, somebody thought this was funny and they sent it to me. They're thinking about me. Sometimes just something along those lines is something of closure. And unfortunately, some of the guys my friends that I carry their photos at the races for Race to Race 22, that those were instances where there was no signs. Some people don't. Some people hide it very well, and that's very unfortunate that they were not able to to give a clue. That's very, very difficult. I had a friend of mine call me in a crisis situation. It was about 5 or 6 years ago, and was 2,000 miles away, working in a different state. And I called my dad. And he knew this guy, and I called my dad. My dad went over and stopped something. That was one of. I'm glad I made that call.
I don't know what happened to your volume, but something happened to your volume.
Oh, is it better now?
Yeah, you're good.
Unfortunately, that's not the first time that an interference like that has happened. I had another friend, and
Hold on, Jason. You're getting a little garbled. I don't know if it's your internet connection or your you have a Bluetooth on.
Bluetooth on. Could be. How's that? Is that better?
Not really.
No.
Maybe just go to the audio off the phone.
How about now?
That's way better.
It's better.
Okay. I switched from the headphones to my truck, so I might not have the active noise cancellation anymore. You guys everybody hear me okay now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I mean that I had another friend of mine. I mean, and I knew he was struggling with some stuff. You know, he was in a new area, new job, had a little bit of legal issues. And we always talked about stuff. And one day he called me and I could just tell something was off. And it was the same instance. I called a guy who was on his way home from work and knew my friend, and he happened to be a half a mile from the exit to my house. And he got off the exit, went to my house, and he was able to prevent a catastrophic event. So like, it's unfortunate. I mean, I've had those types of experiences, and I am so thankful that I made the calls when I did. But I mean, there's other guys and other individuals that I know that there was no signs, and it's something that doesn't discriminate. You could think someone has a perfect life and the next day they're not here, and no one knows why, and it's just an unfortunate thing. I mean, the best practice that I have found within, to prefer prevention or just anything is just stay in touch with your buddies. Just give them a call, no matter what, even if they're not at risk, or there are no signs. Because those, like I said, I have buddies that there was no signs, but I'm like, man, I wish I would have talked to them. I wish I would have stayed in touch. So I've made it a point, as I'm getting older, I'll reach out to people that I haven't talked to in years, especially guys that I used to serve with, or guys that I know that were veterans, or people that I knew or know that did have other types of struggles in their lives. I just check in every now and again, even if it's once a year. I have a buddy of mine, we make it a point, same day every year, we call each other, we talk for hours. And then I have other friends where now that I'm older and have more of the means, when you're younger, you don't have the means to do, certain things like travel and, go on vacation and this, that, and the other. But I mean, now that I have kind of the means to do such things, there's a friend of mine that I've known for my entire life. And we started out, hey, let's talk once a month. And then that turned into let's visit, let's try to meet up once a year. And now I've seen the guy 2 or 3 times a year. And it's just a matter of just staying in touch with people. Communication. Just let somebody know, like, hey man, I was watching this show or heard this song or I went to this track or whatever. And I thought about this time that we used to do that. But like when people do that for me, and that brings a good joy to me. I mean, Brad and we were like some of the fiercest competitors in the 30B class. I'm not going to say how old he is, but I talked him into racing with the 30-year-olds, and we had some fierce battles out on the course, man. And after every works race, him and I, when I lived in Arizona, we'd hang out and we'd work on bikes. And even if we weren't working on bikes, we'd call each other. If I had something that I needed to talk to, I'd call Brad. If he had something he needed to talk about, sometimes he'd call me. And otherwise, the things that we didn't want to talk about, we'd rub bars out of the track about it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Well said.
Guys, Brad, I cut you off earlier when we were on a topic, and I asked you to hold your thought process on that. I hope you did.
Yeah, gotcha. Amen to that testament from Jason. He understands the depth of what individuals are going through, and he understands how valuable it is to make that extra contact when it comes to your mind, when you're inspired to do that. You know, to talk with Joe, you know, I really wish I had that ball to be able to look into, that nebulous ball to be able to get those exact answers to care for individuals. But, you know, the end of the day, like, I err on the side of caution. You know, I need to be able to meet with someone today for therapy, but I need to be able to meet with them next week or next month or next year. You know, therapy can be a short process, but sometimes it's longer for some individuals. So, you know, I've had to make those calls, you know, to request a welfare check. You know, it's law enforcement has some services that are more specific for individuals with mental health issues in your own area. You may want to research that. You know, how do people respond to welfare checks for a mental health type situation? But, you know, it's something that I take very seriously because I have lost peers, close friends who to suicide. And, you know, if I'm going to err on the side of caution and it's going to allow for another day, another year, you know, I'm going to go there. And I don't like to put people through, you know, a welfare check situation in that. But as a therapist, you know, I maybe have a little bit different lens on this. But I mean, Jason understands this completely, and he's taken actions to help to keep people safe around him. I appreciate him sharing that.
So how can I address to my friends or anybody that would ask, how can we get away from the stigma that when you go to therapy, especially for a man, that you're not weak or that it's not a problem or that you are still capable to do your job? I know that there are certain jobs that if you seek out therapy, they sideline you. And I'm just wondering, how can we get away from that? Because it's not fair to the individual that's reaching out for help, and it's not fair to the people that are wanting to help him or her, that they're going to lose their position, or they're going to be, you know, desk bound or whatever, because someone needs a mental, you know, a little mental release.
Yeah, that's definitely, I would hope there's some more dialogue with human resources, wherever that might be, you know, to support people that are making active steps to deal with their mental health and to keep healthy in that. But, you know, for me, sometimes I like to spin it with people that, like, hey, you know what? You want to call me a therapist? Yes, I am a clinical social worker in that. But, you know, if the idea of a life coach, you know, if that sounds more reasonable to you, if that makes you feel like you're not, you know, stigmatized and being labeled in that, then think of it like that. You know, we've all lined up on the line, you know, for a race, and we've all been coached by different people over the years. And coaching is so important and so helpful, and it empowers individuals. And so, you know, I just want people to, you know, keep wrestling with that idea of, like, how are we able to make therapy more acceptable to individuals? Because you're going to be empowered in the end if you open yourself up to therapy. And if you need to call it, you know, some coaching sessions or something, then call it that, you know, whatever works. That's my idea.
I like the coaching.
I mean,
I like the coaching.
Yeah, there's plenty of things out there that technically are therapy, but they call it something else. You know, it's like, I mean, if I call you carburetor therapy, that was a conversation the other night. You know, like if you know, I mean, Brad, you know, and social workers and therapists, they're capable of much more. It's much more than just therapy. Like they go down so many avenues unlocking people's potential, at figuring out where their strong points are, where their weaknesses are. It's just like watching somebody out on the track. I mean, it's essentially is a coach. You know, hey, you're good at turns, but you suck at starts. Let's work on those. You're good. You know, let's take a little bit of time away from that. You know, or hey, you want to play violin, but you're a better bass player. You know, or anything. Do you like to draw? Do you like to do this? Do you like to figuring out people's strong points and weak points of what they're capable of physically doing, and then unlocking where their mental strong points and weak points are doing. You know,
Okay,
where they excel.
let me ask you this, Jason.
Yes, sir.
Briefly, because I'm going to ask everybody briefly, what's your best release in that fashion? You know, something that you do that gives you that mental clarity that helps you move forward every day.
I like talking shop with people. Like that's one of my biggest things. Like I'll be on the phone with Brad, Ian, other racers. You know, I like talking shop because I come up with different ideas that I may not have thought. Okay, if we're talking, we're talking about quads, we're talking about racing. That's my passion. That turned into another passion. It led me down other avenues. It's led me to make different, career choices. It's led me to, to want to be better physically in certain aspects with, whether, health issues that I've had in regards to racing and stuff like that. So, like talking about it and being about it, like those are like my things, and it opens up. And Brad can attest to this. He might just call me. I think like a couple of days ago, he called me to ask me about adjusting a front end, and we went on like a 3-hour deep dive, like just like this conversation, and it unlocked so many different things, and different ideas started coming about. I mean, we thought about, okay, well, what could we do with this? See if we built this machine. Like we talked about even building, machines, and obviously having some sort of, waivers of liability, but to find people who are struggling or needing an outlet, and hey, introduce them to this sport, or like call it like race to recovery. Hey, instead of going out to the bar, you want to go spend $1,000 in a weekend? Come to a track, leave the bar.
Right. Right. Get away from the
Like
alcohol.
yeah, it's like, but in turn, and I'll make this clear because I am guilty as charged, and I mean, like I said about, legal issues, even with racing and whatever your positive outlet or immersion is, it needs to be done in moderation. Because you can't be out there blowing all your money on racing if you've got a family to feed and stuff like that. So
every time Brad starts taking notes, I start getting nervous.
Yeah, well,
Joe,
we'll turn the stage over to Brad.
well, I was going to
Yeah.
go to Joe real quick on Joe. What's your release for allowing yourself to stay level?
I'd say that on the day to day, I just try to exercise, and it's amazing that either going out, getting on the mountain bike, doing a hard ride with a lot of climbing. I find that if it's always good and beneficial cardio, or going and just lifting weights for an hour and a half heavy, and leaving and knowing I'm going to be sore for a few days. It's like if you're in that negative energy space, and I know for me, I can be full of energy, but it's just, it might be negative and toxic that day. And me and my wife will get off the bike and, stand next to the back of the truck, or we'll walk out of the gym, and she'll look at me and she'll say, "How do you feel now?" And I'm like, "Fine." Like, it's the demon's gone.
Right.
It's, if you have negative energy, at least for me, burn it up. Don't sit there and sit on the couch and stew in the anger and the adrenaline and the negative endorphins. Go out there and busting my butt and wearing myself out and getting a good dopamine hit from a workout it's a good mental reset, either that, or if that's not on the thing and it's just like the basement's cluttered, my marketing for the past, 3 months has sucked. And, financially need to do better. It's like, I just try to, how can I get a win? If I can just, find something, if it's, I've got a stack of shit, it's like, what can I do to take one aspect of that stack of negativity that I can just focus on and take one of those things and turn it around and get a W out of it. And it's like, all right, that's pressure off, that's stress off, that's a win, and I can turn that negative energy, emotion, doubt, all the things that we don't want. And then all of a sudden it's like better, turn the frown upside down. So, yeah, I either exhaust myself or I just find a way to accomplish something that I can feel proud of in the moment, and that helps.
That's awesome. Brad, I'm going to throw this one at you in your personal life now. When you go and you have your release, I know that you have racing, but what is something else that you do that allows you to release the bad energy?
Good question. I liked even Jason, as he was sharing, he had his Doberman, looking over his shoulder and that. And pets are a nice release because they're always ready to go. They're always 100%. They're always completely in, and you're something to them. It's like, you may feel like you're this big, but you're the entire world to that special animal.
Yes.
So I love that, and I have gravitated towards that over the years. I wasn't always a pet person. But yeah, I see that value. Also, another piece for me is something in therapy. I always like to explore what someone's level of spirituality is. Do they believe in a higher power? How are they exercising that faith on a regular basis? And that's something that's valuable to me. It's important to me. In my seeking to fine tune that relationship with a higher power in my own life? Am I listening to the testimonies of other people who have, fallen away or come back, and what their life process is all about? So for me, that relationship with a higher power is important. And what actions am I taking? What reading am I doing, to help to foster that? So that's something that I rely on in my own life, and I encourage others in their own experience.
That's freaking outstanding. You guys are on the ball. I really appreciate everything that you're doing. And this conversation's been a little heavy, and I appreciate, Jason, you kind of spearheaded it a little bit, and a lot of it. And Brad, I got to have a conversation with you that led up to it as well. Joe, you and I are always having conversations, and I appreciate you sharing with us as well. If you haven't got your subscription to ATV On Demand, you need to get that. UTV On Demand, Dirt Wheels, and also subscribe to ATV-TALK. Everybody, I appreciate your input on this topic. And there again, it's all about education. If you need to talk to somebody, find a Brad. Reach out to one of your friends.
Call me.
The ATV industry.
Message me on Instagram. Anything. If anybody's watching, I am more than willing and more than open to listen to anybody's issues and problems. I'm not a professional, but I mean, I've got my circle of brotherhood. It keeps growing. I know there's certain. And Leonard, to be honest with you, like these conversations and the stuff that we've been doing, I want to thank you so much, because people have been watching what we've been doing with our race program and then seeing it on your show as a stage for us to put that out there. I've had people reach out to me, even from the racing community, that have just like, out of the blue, hey man, just calling to talk. I was kind of feeling a certain way, and seeing that I'm able to get out here and put myself out here, lay it out on the table. It's made others that I've known for years, that I never would have thought, feel more comfortable about just calling and talking. and sharing some feelings and having a little bit of vulnerability without even having the slightest thought of weakness. They know that there's no, I pass no judgment on anybody. So I want to thank you again for having me on here as often as you do, and helping facilitate us a platform to spread with what we're doing with our program. Thank you again, Leonard.
My honor. It's my pleasure. And anybody that knows me, that has my number, knows how to get a hold of me, knows that they can call me. I will answer 99% of the time. The only time I don't answer is when I'm with my wife. And anybody that knows my background and knows my wife is, we're always working. So I'm generally got my phone on me most of the time. And Brad, thank you so much for giving us your time and your expertise, and making people aware that it's okay to reach out and ask for help. Joe, as always, brother, I appreciate your insights and your growth in the industry as well. So thank you guys so much. And if anybody's listening and watching and you need to reach out, ATV-TALK's phone numbers are on there. The 988 number is always available to you. You can catch any one of us on Instagram or any social media. There's always somebody to help. Do not believe that you're alone, because you're not. We're always here for you. Joe looks mean, but Joe's a really, really nice guy, and he will take the time to help you.
And he'll talk your ear off too. So
yeah, if you need a friend, I'll give you 90 minutes free.
I can't. I got to make sure I have 2 to 3 hours set aside if I'm going to call Joe for anything. So
same here. Never a short conversation. Never a short one.
Yep.
Gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and everybody, please help a friend. Reach out. It doesn't take that much to just extend a hand, make a phone call, send a text. Be there, because they need you. You need them, and let's take care of our community.
Excellent message.
All right, gentlemen. Have a great night. Thank you very much.
Good one.
Happy